The plasma restraints burned against Marcus Chen's wrists as he was dragged through the crystalline corridors of the Zephyrian command ship. His uniform, once the deep blue of Earth's colonial defense force, was torn and stained with purple alien blood. The two Zephyrian guards flanking him stood nearly 3 meters tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the ship's bioluminescent lighting. Admiral Krixtal clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as Marcus was forced to his knees before the execution platform. The Zephyrian's compound eyes reflected the gathered crowd of alien dignitaries who had come to witness this moment. Representatives from across the Galactic Empire filled the observation deck, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of scales, fur, and synthetic materials. Human. Krixtal's voice resonated through the translation device at his throat. You stand accused of the murder of High Commander Velnari and 17 Zephyrian officers. Your species has proven to be nothing more than violent primitives, unworthy of the mercy the Empire has shown you. Marcus raised his head, meeting the Admiral's gaze with steel-gray eyes that showed no fear. Blood trickled from a cut above his left eyebrow, but his voice was steady when he spoke. You invaded our world. You enslaved our people. What did you expect us to do? Send flowers? A ripple of shocked chittering ran through the assembled aliens. The audacity of this small, soft-skinned creature speaking so boldly to one of the Empire's highest-ranking officials was unprecedented. Most species surrendered immediately when faced with the Empire's might, grateful to be allowed to exist as vassal states. But humans were different. They had been different from the moment first contact was made. 3 years ago, the Empire had expected an easy conquest when their scouts discovered Earth. The humans possessed rudimentary space travel and primitive weapons compared to the Empire's technology. Their world should have fallen within days like so many others before it. Instead, the conquest of Earth had taken 2 full years and cost the Empire more ships and personnel than any previous campaign in their 1,000-year history of expansion. The humans fought with a creativity and ferocity that stunned their enemies. They turned their own cities into death traps, used their knowledge of their homeworld against invaders, and refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Marcus Chen had been the worst of them all. A former military sniper turned resistance fighter, he had single-handedly eliminated over 200 Zephyrian soldiers and officers during the occupation. His preferred tactic was to strike from impossible distances, often from positions that should have been unreachable for a primitive human. He had become a legend among the resistance and a nightmare for the occupying forces. Your rebellion ends here, Krixtal continued, gesturing to the execution platform. Let this be a message to any remaining human resistance. The Empire's patience has limits. The platform itself was a work of Zephyrian artistry, carved from a single piece of dark crystal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Ancient runes covered its surface, telling the stories of other species that had dared to defy the Empire. Soon, Marcus's story would join them. Before we proceed, announced Chancellor Vorthak, the Empire's highest civilian authority, I wish to make clear to all present that this execution serves as more than mere justice. It is a demonstration of what happens to those who resist the natural order. The Empire brings peace and prosperity to the galaxy. Those who oppose this gift forfeit their right to exist. Marcus found himself thinking of his daughter Sarah, who would be 10 years old now if she had lived to see this day. The memory of her laughter echoed in his mind, along with the screams that had filled their home when the Zephyrian soldiers came. He thought of his wife Elena, whose final words had been a whispered promise that humanity would never kneel to monsters. Any last words, human? Krixtal asked, raising the ceremonial execution blade. The weapon hummed with energy, its edge sharp enough to cut through molecular bonds. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and the assembled dignitaries leaned forward, curious to hear what final plea or curse would come from this defiant creature. When he finally spoke, his words were soft, almost conversational. You know what the funny thing is about us humans? Marcus said, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. We're terrible at following rules, especially the ones about knowing when we're beaten. He reached up and touched something at his collar, a small device that had somehow escaped the notice of his captors. It was no larger than a button, made from materials that registered as organic to Zephyrian scanners. What is that? Krixtal demanded, taking a step back. Marcus's smile widened. Emergency beacon. Military frequency. Been broadcasting our location for the past 6 hours. The blood drained from several aliens' faces as the implications hit them. The Zephyrian command ship was supposed to be undetectable, hidden behind layers of stealth technology that had never failed before. Impossible, Vorthak hissed. Human technology cannot penetrate our when alarm began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the execution chamber in pulsing red illumination, as automated voices announced in dozens of languages, incoming vessels detected. Multiple FTL signatures approaching. All hands to battle stations. Krixtal's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. How many ships? A Zephyrian technician rushed into the chamber, his exoskeleton trembling. Admiral, our sensors are registering massive fleet formations jumping in from hyperspace. The signatures are... They're everywhere, sir. Surrounding us on all vectors, and how many? Krixtal repeated, his voice rising. The technician's next word sent a chill through every being in the room. 12,000 ships and counting, sir. They're still arriving. Marcus laughed, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Did you really think I was the only one? That Earth fell because we gave up? We didn't lose, Admiral. We just changed tactics. Through the crystalline walls of the execution chamber, they could see the first glimpses of the approaching fleet. Ships of unfamiliar design, sleek and predatory, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of years of planning and preparation. The execution of Marcus Chen was forgotten as chaos erupted around them. The Galactic Empire was about to discover that conquering Earth had been the easy part. The real war was just beginning. Admiral Krixtal's compound eyes tracked the approaching vessels through the observation ports, his mandibles chattering in disbelief. The human fleet moved like a school of predators, their formations tight and purposeful. Each ship bore scars of battle, hull plating patched and repatched, but they flew with the confidence of veterans who had survived everything the galaxy could throw at them. Status report. Krixtal barked into his communication device. Admiral, we're reading 13,000 human vessels and the number is still climbing, came the panicked voice of his tactical officer. They're using some kind of jump technology we've never seen before. No hyperspace distortion, no quantum signatures. They're just appearing. Marcus remained kneeling on the execution platform, but his demeanor had changed completely. The defeated prisoner was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. His eyes held the calm certainty of a man who had been counting down to this moment for months. Chancellor Vorthak stepped forward, his usually pristine robes trembling with rage. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated that Earth's remaining population was scattered across refugee ships, barely surviving on scraps and salvage. Your intelligence was wrong, Marcus said quietly. You see, when you conquered Earth, you made a fundamental error. You assumed that because you controlled our cities and our governments, you had beaten us. But humans have this annoying habit of thinking outside the box. The massive view screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing tactical displays of the approaching fleet. The alien dignitaries watched in growing horror as more and more ships appeared, their formations spreading out to encircle not just the Zephyrian command ship, but the entire Galactic Empire fleet that had been hidden in this sector. 15,000 ships now. Admiral, reported the tactical officer. Wait, Admiral, we're getting a communication request. It's coming from the lead human vessel. Put it through, Krixtal ordered, though his voice lacked its usual authority. The largest screen shimmered, then cleared to show a human face. The woman appeared to be in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a military bun and eyes that held the weight of command. Her uniform was crisp and bore insignia that none of the aliens recognized. I am Admiral Sarah Chen Rodriguez of the Terran Exodus Fleet, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. You are currently surrounded by approximately 15,000 human vessels. We have come to collect our people. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Sarah, his daughter, grown up and wearing Admiral's stars. She had survived. Admiral Chen Rodriguez. Vorthak stepped forward, trying to project authority he no longer felt. I am Chancellor Vorthak of the Galactic Empire. Your forces are vastly outnumbered. The Empire controls over 3 million vessels across 1,000 systems. You cannot hope to... Sarah's laugh cut him off. It was a sound devoid of humor, carrying the bitter edge of someone who had lost everything and found the will to take it back. Chancellor, you seem to be operating under several misconceptions, she said. First, this isn't a negotiation. Second, we're not here to fight your entire empire. And third, you're about to discover why humans have a saying, don't mess with Texas. Or in this case, don't mess with Earth. What do you want? Crystal demanded. Simple. You're going to release every human prisoner you're holding. You're going to provide coordinates for every slave labor camp, every prison facility, every place you've stashed our people. And then you're going to leave human space and never come back. The assembled alien dignitaries exchanged glances. Some chittered nervously. Others made threatening gestures, but all of them were calculating odds and finding them disturbingly uncertain. And if we refuse? Vorthak asked. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold and final settled in her eyes. Then you'll discover what 3 years of preparation can accomplish when you have absolutely nothing left to lose. Admiral. The tactical officer's voice crackled through the communications. The human vessels they're doing something. Energy readings are spiking across their entire fleet. On the tactical displays, each human ship began to glow with a soft blue light. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Empire's databases. Not weapons, not shields, but something else entirely. Marcus finally spoke up from his position on the execution platform. You want to know what we learned during your occupation? We learned that the Empire's technology relies on a few key principles. Quantum entanglement for communication, zero-point energy for power, and, most importantly, subspace frequency manipulation for everything from navigation to life support. Understanding began to dawn on some of the more technically minded aliens in the chamber. We also learned, Marcus continued, that humans have a talent for breaking things, especially things that everyone else considers unbreakable. The blue glow around the human ships intensified, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the Zephyrian command vessel. Emergency lights flashed as systems across the ship began to fail in cascade failure patterns. Admiral, the tactical officer's voice was now openly panicked. Our navigation systems are failing. Communications are down. Life support is switching to emergency backup. Sarah's image on the screen remained perfectly clear, apparently unaffected by the technological chaos surrounding them. What you're experiencing is the result of a little project we've been working on. We call it the frequency hammer. It's designed to disrupt the specific subspace frequencies that your technology depends on. Crixtal staggered as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. This is an act of war against the entire Empire. No, Sarah replied calmly. This is the consequence of making war on humanity. You see, Chancellor Admiral, when you conquered Earth, you didn't just take our world. You took our children. Our families, our future, and that was a mistake. More alarms joined the cacophony as secondary systems began failing. The lights dimmed, emergency power kicked in, and the environmental system started cycling erratically. The frequency hammer affects every piece of Empire technology within its operational range, Sarah continued. Ships, space stations, communication arrays, automated defense platforms. Everything you've built your civilization on becomes useless scrap metal. How is this possible? Vorthak whispered. Your technology is primitive. You barely achieved interstellar flight before we arrived? Marcus laughed from the execution platform. That's what made us dangerous. We had to learn to improvise, to adapt, to survive without relying on technology that could be taken away from us. When your species has been fighting each other for thousands of years, you learn to think differently about warfare. On the tactical displays, the chaos was spreading. Not just to the Zephyrian command ship, but to every Empire vessel in the sector. Ships that had been hidden in stealth formations suddenly became visible as their cloaking devices failed. Defense platforms went dark. Communication networks collapsed. 15 minutes, Sarah announced. That's how long it takes for the effect to become permanent. After that, every piece of Empire technology in this sector will be dead. Permanently. No repairs, no restarts, no recovery. The alien dignitaries were now openly panicking. Some tried to access their personal communication devices only to find them dark and useless. Others called for their security details, but the ship's internal communication system was down. What do you want? Vorthak asked again, but this time his voice held no authority. Only desperation. Sarah smiled, and for the first time there was warmth in it. I want to collect my father and take him home, along with every other human you've imprisoned. And then I want you to spread the word throughout your empire. Earth remembers, and we're coming home. The countdown had begun. and the Galactic Empire was about to learn that conquering humanity had been the worst decision in their 1,000-year history. 10 minutes into the countdown, the true scope of humanity's plan began to reveal itself. Chancellor Vorthak watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across the sector, each message painting a picture of systematic technological collapse that defied everything the Empire understood about warfare. "Sir," gasped a Threnody communications officer, her crystalline form flickering as her personal translation matrix failed. "We're receiving emergency signals from the Kepler defense grid. All automated systems have gone dark. The Vanguard fleet reports complete loss of navigation and weapons systems." Admiral Kriegstahl tried to access his command console, but the holographic interface remained stubbornly dark. His ship's quantum computers, capable of calculating hyperspace jumps across galactic distances, were reduced to expensive paperweights. "How?" he demanded, turning to Marcus, who remained surprisingly calm despite being bound and kneeling on an execution platform in the middle of a technological apocalypse. "How is this possible? The range required to affect our entire sector would require energy output beyond anything your species possesses." Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering the question with the air of a professor explaining a particularly interesting problem to a student. "You're thinking about this wrong, Admiral. You're assuming we're generating this effect from our ships, but that's not how the frequency hammer works." On the main display, Sarah Chen Rodriguez continued to observe the chaos with professional detachment. "Perhaps it's time for a history lesson," she said. "When the Empire conquered Earth, you were very thorough. You cataloged our resources, our technology, our population. You even documented our infrastructure with impressive detail. What you failed to understand was what you were looking at. The ship lurched as another system failed, artificial gravity compensators struggling to maintain stability. Through the observation ports, the assembled dignitaries could see Empire vessels drifting helplessly, their running lights flickering and dying one by one. Earth had 13,000 satellite communication arrays in orbit when you arrived," Sarah continued. "Military, civilian, commercial, scientific. You assumed they were primitive communication devices and largely ignored them. Some you destroyed, others you repurposed for your own use. But you left the majority of them in place thinking they were harmless." Understanding began to dawn on some of the more technically astute aliens. A Nexari scientist made a high-pitched whistling sound that their species used to express shock. "Impossible," he chittered. "You couldn't have hidden advanced technology in primitive satellites. Our scans would have detected any quantum manipulation devices or zero-point generators." Marcus smiled. "That's because there weren't any. Those satellites contained nothing but standard Earth technology. Radioactive isotopes, basic circuitry, simple transmitters. Nothing that would raise any red flags." "Then how?" Vorthak began. "Fusion," Marcus said simply. "Good old-fashioned nuclear fusion. Each satellite contained enough radioactive material to create a small fusion reaction when triggered remotely. Not enough to damage anything, just enough to create a specific electromagnetic pulse at a very precise frequency. The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. The Threnody communications officer actually stepped backward, her crystalline form resonating with harmonic distress. "You turned your entire satellite network into a resonance amplifier," she whispered. 13,000 transmission points, Sarah confirmed, each one capable of generating and amplifying a subspace frequency disruption pulse. When activated simultaneously, they create an interference pattern that covers everything within 100 light-year radius. Admiral Kriegstahl felt his exoskeleton crack under the stress of what he was hearing, but that would require coordination across your entire planet. The timing would have to be precise to the nanosecond. "Oh, it gets better," Marcus said. "Remember, Admiral, humans are very good at following instructions when properly motivated. When you enslaved our population and scattered them across the galaxy, you did us a favor. You placed human workers in every major Empire facility, every space station, every critical infrastructure point." The blood drained from multiple alien faces as they realized what Marcus was implying. "Every human ship captain forced into your merchant marine," Sarah continued. "Every engineer conscripted to work on your space stations. Every technician assigned to your communication arrays. They were all following a very simple set of instructions. Wait for the signal, then activate the resonance devices they'd been secretly building and hiding for 3 years." "Resonance devices?" Forthak's voice was barely a whisper. Nothing fancy, Marcus explained. Just simple electromagnetic pulse generators, built from scavenged materials and hidden in maintenance areas. Each one tuned to the same frequency as our satellite network. When the satellites sent out their pulse, every device hidden in your infrastructure responded and amplified the signal. The tactical displays were now showing a cascade failure across the entire sector. Space stations going dark, defense platforms drifting powerless, entire fleet formations dead in space. But more alarming was the pattern of the failures. They were spreading outward from key communication hubs, following the Empire's own communication network. The frequency disruption is propagating through your quantum entanglement communication system, Sarah explained. Every time it tries to re-establish contact with a dead node, it carries the disruption to the next relay station. Your own network is spreading our weapon throughout the Empire. A new voice cut through the chaos. A Zephyrian technician running into the chamber with his exoskeleton clicking in panic. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the core worlds. The disruption has reached the Centauri hub. 3 entire sectors have gone dark. Chancellor Vorthak staggered, his composure finally cracking. This is genocide. You're destroying the infrastructure that keeps billions of beings alive. No, Sarah replied, her voice carrying the weight of personal loss. Genocide is what you did to Earth. What we're doing is called justice. And unlike your brand of justice, ours comes with a way out. What do you mean? Krikstal demanded. Marcus answered from the execution platform. The effect isn't permanent if you shut down the affected systems within 30 minutes. Emergency protocols can bypass the frequency disruption. Life support can be maintained on backup power. But your military infrastructure, your communications, your ability to coordinate across galactic distances, that's gone until you rebuild it from scratch. Rebuild? Vorthak laughed bitterly. The Empire spans 1,000 systems. The coordination required to rebuild our infrastructure would take decades. Or, Sarah said quietly, you could accept our terms. Release every human prisoner. Provide reparations for the damage done to Earth. Withdraw from human space permanently. Do that and we'll provide you with the frequency nullification codes that will stop the cascade effect. And if we refuse? Sarah's expression hardened. Then in about 15 minutes, when the effect becomes permanent, the Galactic Empire will cease to exist as a functioning entity. Your ships will be scrap metal. Your space stations will be dark. Your communication network will be silent, and every species you've conquered over the past 1,000 years will suddenly find themselves free to settle old scores. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of failing systems and distant alarms. The alien dignitaries looked at each other with growing desperation as they realized the scope of the trap they'd walked into. Marcus looked up at the main screen, meeting his daughter's eyes across the vast distances of space. "Hello, baby girl," he said softly. "I knew you'd figure out a way," Sarah smiled. And for a moment the hardened admiral disappeared, replaced by a little girl who had promised her father she would never give up. "Nobody messes with the Chen family," she replied. The countdown continued, and the Galactic Empire faced a choice that would determine whether it survived the next 20 minutes. The reports continued to flood in from across the Empire, each one painting a more devastating picture than the last. What had started as a localized technological failure was now spreading like a virus through the galaxy's most sophisticated communication network, turning the Empire's greatest strength into the instrument of its destruction. "The Andorian sector has gone silent," reported a panicked Volcari aide, his tentacles writhing with distress. "The Titan defense grid is down. Even the core fleet is reporting massive system failures." Chancellor Vorthak slumped into his ceremonial chair, the weight of impossible decisions crushing down on him. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched their civilization crumble in real time. 5 minutes, Sarah announced from the main screen. After that, every piece of Empire technology affected by the frequency cascade will be permanently offline. No restarts, no repairs, no recovery. Admiral Krikstal turned to study Marcus with new eyes. The human still knelt on the execution platform, but there was nothing submissive about his posture anymore. He sat with the calm assurance of someone watching a carefully laid plan unfold exactly as intended. "This level of coordination," Krikstal said slowly, "the precise timing, the strategic placement of assets. This isn't the work of scattered refugees and resistance fighters. This is a military operation years in the planning." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "Now you're starting to understand. You see, Admiral, When you conquered Earth, you made one critical error. You assumed that because you controlled our planet, you had defeated our people. But humans have a saying, you can't kill an idea. What idea? Vorthak demanded. Freedom, Marcus replied simply. When you scattered humanity across the galaxy as slaves and laborers, you thought you were breaking us apart. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift possible, access to every corner of your empire. A new voice cut through the chamber as another technician burst in. This one, a hegemony drone whose cybernetic implants sparked with feedback from failing systems. Chancellor, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. The mining operations at Kepler 442 have gone dark. The slave labor camps at Proxima are reporting complete system failures. It's not just military targets. Every facility with human workers is being affected. Sarah smiled on the screen. Did you think we were idle during our captivity? Every human forced to work in your mines learned the layout of your facilities. Every engineer conscripted to maintain your stations memorized the location of critical systems. Every ship captain pressed into your service mapped the routes between your worlds. The true scope of what they were facing began to dawn on the assembled aliens. This wasn't a desperate last stand by a defeated species. This was the culmination of the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. 3 years, Marcus continued. 3 years of our people documenting everything. The location of every military installation, every command center, every communication hub. We know your empire better than you do because we built half of it with our own hands. But the coordination required, protested a Centauri scientist, to synchronize operations across thousands of systems simultaneously. The communication lag alone would make it impossible. Under normal circumstances, yes, Sarah agreed. But humans have always excelled at finding solutions to impossible problems. Tell them about the diaspora protocol, Dad. Marcus shifted slightly, his restraints allowing him to gesture toward the observation ports where the human fleet hung in space like predatory sharks. When Earth fell, we knew this day would come, he said. So we prepared. Every human scattered across the empire carried with them not just their skills and knowledge, but a piece of our collective memory. The diaspora protocol isn't just a communication system, it's a cultural preservation project. Each human family unit was assigned a specific role, Sarah explained. Some were to gather intelligence, others to prepare assets, still others to maintain our technological base. But all of them carried the same core programming. When the signal came, everyone would know exactly what to do. The ship lurched again as another critical system failed. Through the failing artificial gravity, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the faces of increasingly desperate alien officials. You turned your entire species into a sleeper agent network, Crystal whispered in something approaching admiration. We turned our species into humanity, Marcus corrected. You see, that's what you never understood about us. We're not just individuals competing for resources. When threatened, we become something greater than the sum of our parts. Every human worker in your empire wasn't just a laborer. They were a neuron in a vast intelligence network. And when Dad's beacon activated, Sarah continued, it didn't just signal our fleet. It activated every single human in the empire simultaneously. 3 billion people, all acting with perfect coordination toward a single goal. A new alarm began blaring, different from the others. This one carried the specific harmonic frequency that indicated critical life support failure. Admiral, came a voice over the faltering communication system. Oxygen recycling is approaching critical failure. Environmental controls are offline. We have maybe 10 minutes of breathable atmosphere left. Chancellor Vorthak rose from his chair with visible effort. You're willing to let us all die? Including your own father? Sarah's expression didn't waver. My father volunteered for this mission knowing the risks, just like the 3 billion humans who spent 3 years preparing for this moment. We're not willing to let you die, Chancellor. We're willing to let you choose. What choice? Accept our terms. Release every human prisoner. Provide full reparations for the damage done to Earth and her colonies. Withdraw permanently from human space. Do that. And we'll transmit the nullification codes that will restore your critical systems and stop the cascade effect. And if we refuse? Marcus answered from the execution platform. Then in about 3 minutes, when your life support fails permanently, you'll discover what humans call Pyrrhic victory. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of dying systems. The alien dignitaries looked at each other with growing panic as they realized that these humans weren't bluffing. They had sacrificed everything, their homeworld, their freedom, their lives, to engineer this moment. "You're insane," Vorthak whispered. "No," Marcus replied calmly. "We're human. There's a difference, but I can understand why you might not see it." The countdown timer on the main screen showed 2 minutes and 37 seconds remaining. Across the galaxy, the greatest empire in known history faced its final choice: surrender completely, or watch everything they had built over 1,000 years crumble into darkness. In the observation ports, the human fleet waited with infinite patience. They had waited 3 years for this moment. They could wait a little longer, but the Empire couldn't. Time was running out, and with it, any hope of maintaining the galactic order that had defined civilization for a millennium. The choice belonged to Chancellor Vorthak, and he had less than 3 minutes to make it. 2 minutes remained on the countdown when the first signs of complete systemic collapse reached the Zephyrian command ship. What had begun as a coordinated technological attack was rapidly evolving into something far more devastating: the complete breakdown of galactic civilization itself. Chancellor. A hegemony messenger stumbled into the chamber, his cybernetic implants sparking and failing. "Reports from the core worlds. The Proxima Mining Consortium has declared independence. They are claiming the Empire no longer has the authority to govern them." Chancellor Vorthak felt the last vestiges of his composure crumble. The Mining Consortium controlled 17 systems and supplied nearly 30% of the Empire's rare earth metals. Without their resources, the Empire's industrial base would collapse within months. "And that's just the beginning," Sarah said from the main screen, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had planned for every contingency. "When word spreads that the Empire can't even protect its own command ships, how long do you think your vassal states will continue to pay tribute?" As if summoned by her words, another messenger burst into the chamber. This one was a Threnody crystal being, whose normally perfect harmonic resonance was distorted by panic. "The Vegan Republic has severed all diplomatic ties. They're demanding immediate withdrawal of all Empire forces from their territory. The Arcturus Federation is mobilizing their defense fleets." Admiral Crixtal watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The cascade effect had reached 47 sectors now, and everywhere it touched, the same pattern repeated. Military infrastructure collapsed, communication networks failed, and local governments suddenly found themselves free from imperial oversight for the first time in generations. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" he said to Marcus. "You're not just destroying our technology. You're destroying the Empire itself." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "We're returning the galaxy to its natural state. Before the Empire, these worlds governed themselves. They traded freely, formed their own alliances, lived their own lives. You took that away from them. We brought peace." Vorthak shouted, his composure finally cracking completely. "Order, stability. Without the Empire, the galaxy will descend into chaos." "Whose definition of peace?" Marcus asked quietly. "The Altarians whose homeworld you strip-mined? The Danebians whose culture you outlawed? The humans whose children you sold into slavery?" 1 minute remaining, Sarah announced. Around her on the main screen, they could see human officers monitoring dozens of different communication channels, coordinating the largest military operation in galactic history with calm efficiency. The ship's emergency lighting flickered as life support systems approached critical failure. Several of the alien dignitaries were already showing signs of respiratory distress as the oxygen levels dropped. "Sir," gasped the Zephyrian tactical officer, "we're receiving priority transmissions from across the Empire. The Rigel sector fleet is requesting immediate evacuation authorization. The Centauri defense grid has gone completely dark. The Imperial Treasury is reporting that 70% of their assets are in systems that have lost communication." Vorthak staggered to the main console, his hands shaking as he tried to access the Empire's emergency protocols. But the quantum computers that normally processed thousands of decisions per second remained stubbornly dark. "You have to understand," he pleaded, turning to face the human fleet on the main screen. "If the Empire falls, millions will die. Trade routes will collapse. Supply chains will break down. Worlds that depend on imported food and medicine will face famine and plague." Sarah's expression softened slightly, the first crack in her professional demeanor. "We know. We've spent 3 years preparing for that too." "What do you mean?" Marcus answered from the execution platform. Every human worker forced to labor in your supply chains memorized the routes, the schedules, the dependencies. We know which worlds need what resources to survive. When your empire falls, there will be other organizations ready to step in. The Terran Humanitarian Fleet, Sarah explained. 15,000 ships loaded with medical supplies, food, and emergency equipment. They're already moving toward the systems that will need immediate assistance. Unlike your empire, we're not interested in conquest. We're interested in making sure the innocent don't suffer for the crimes of their leaders. New alarms began blaring as the ship's structural integrity fields fluctuated. Through the observation ports, they could see that several Empire vessels had already lost main power completely, drifting dark and silent like monuments to a fallen civilization. 30 seconds, Sarah announced. Please, Vorthak whispered, all pretense of authority gone. There has to be another way. There is, Marcus said simply. Accept our terms. All of them. Unconditionally. Right now. The Chancellor looked around the chamber at the faces of species that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. In their eyes he saw the dawning realization that their age was ending. The Pax Galactica that had defined civilization since before most of them were born was about to become a memory. The surrender protocols, he said slowly. What exactly are you demanding? Sarah's voice took on a formal tone as if she was reading from a prepared document. Complete and unconditional release of all human prisoners and slaves. Full reparations for damage done to Earth and her colonies, to be determined by an independent tribunal. Immediate withdrawal of all Empire forces from the Sol system and a 50-light-year exclusion zone around it. Recognition of human sovereignty over all worlds where humans constitute a majority population. And in return, we'll transmit the nullification codes to stop the cascade effect. Your critical systems will be restored. Your people won't die. But the Empire as a galactic power ends today. 15 seconds, came the countdown. Vorthak closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of history pressing down on him. When he opened them again, he was no longer looking at the Chancellor of the Galactic Empire. He was looking at a man who had to choose between his pride and the lives of trillions. 10 seconds. Around the chamber, the surviving alien dignitaries held their breath. Some were trying to access personal communication devices to contact their home governments. Others simply stared at the tactical displays showing the expanding wave of technological collapse. 5 seconds. Marcus looked up at the main screen, meeting his daughter's eyes one last time. In her face, he saw not just the admiral who had orchestrated the fall of an empire, but the little girl who had once promised him that humans would never kneel to monsters. 3 seconds. I accept your terms, Vorthak whispered. 2 seconds. Louder, Sarah demanded. For the record, 1 second. I, Chancellor Vorthak of the Galactic Empire, formally accept the surrender terms offered by the Terran Exodus Fleet, he shouted. 0. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in the entire ordeal it was genuine. Nullification codes transmitting now, Chancellor. Welcome to the new galaxy. The Empire was dead. Humanity was free, and the real work of rebuilding a galaxy was about to begin. The nullification codes took effect within seconds, and across the chamber, dying systems flickered back to life. Emergency lighting was replaced by normal illumination. Life support resumed its steady hum, and the artificial gravity stabilized. But the reprieve came too late to save the Empire itself. The damage to its infrastructure and authority was irreversible. Admiral Crystal slumped in his command chair as reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The numbers painted a picture of devastation beyond anything seen in recorded history. Sir, his tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with shock. Final casualty assessments are coming in. We've lost contact with 463 star systems. 800 million personnel are stranded on disabled vessels. The Imperial fleet has lost 97% of its operational capacity. Marcus Chen rose slowly from the execution platform as his restraints were remotely deactivated. His legs stiff from kneeling, but his spirit unbroken. Around him, the alien dignitaries watched with a mixture of fear and fascination as the man who had orchestrated their downfall stretched and looked around the chamber with calm satisfaction. The really impressive part, he said conversationally, isn't what we destroyed. It's what we built to replace it. On the main screen, Sarah had been joined by other human officers, their uniforms bearing insignia from dozens of different organizations. Behind them, Marcus could see the bridge of what was clearly not just a warship, but a mobile command center designed for complex humanitarian operations. Admiral Chen Rodriguez, Chancellor Vorthak said, his voice still shaky from the ordeal. Your nullification code stopped the cascade effect, but our initial reports suggest that the damage to Imperial infrastructure is catastrophic. Entire sectors are cut off from Central Command. How do you propose to prevent complete social collapse? Sarah gestured to one of her officers, a woman wearing the insignia of the Terran Humanitarian Corps. Commander Singh, please brief the former Chancellor on Operation Lighthouse. Commander Singh stepped forward, her bearing professional but not hostile. Mr. Vorthak, over the past 3 years we've established humanitarian supply caches in 743 star systems. Each cache contains enough food, medicine, and basic technology to support the local population for 6 months while new trade relationships are established. Trade relationships? Asked an Ixari dignitary, his translator device crackling as it came back online. The galaxy doesn't need an empire, Marcus explained. It needs cooperation, free trade, mutual assistance pacts, the kinds of relationships that develop naturally when people aren't being conquered and enslaved. Another human officer joined the briefing, this one wearing the uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We've already been in contact with 47 different species and political entities that were former Empire vassals. Most of them are eager to establish independent trade relationships and mutual defense agreements. Admiral Krixtal found his voice. This is impossible. The coordination required to manage galactic commerce without a central authority. The logistics alone would be overwhelming. Only if you're trying to control everything from the top down, Sarah replied. But if you let local systems manage their own affairs and simply facilitate communication and trade between them, it becomes much simpler. Humans learned that lesson the hard way back on Earth. Marcus nodded. We tried the Empire thing ourselves a few times. Never worked out well. Turns out that when you try to control too much from too far away, you end up controlling nothing at all. The tactical displays around the chamber were now showing a very different picture than they had minutes before. Instead of spreading collapse, they showed the emergence of new communication networks, trade routes, and political alliances. The human fleet had apparently been busy doing much more than just coordinating their attack. The Altarian Republic has formally declared independence, reported the Zephyrian tactical officer, his voice carrying a note of wonder. They're requesting assistance in establishing new trade relationships with neighboring systems. The Vegan Federation is offering mutual defense pacts to any former Empire world that wants to join them. And the Denibians? Asked Vorthak. They're throwing a party, Sarah said with a smile. Apparently they've been waiting 300 years for this day. A new figure appeared on the main screen. An elderly human woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her uniform bore no military insignia, but her presence commanded immediate respect. Allow me to introduce Director Elena Vasquez of the Terran Reconstruction Authority, Sarah said. She'll be coordinating the transition assistance for former Empire worlds. Director Vasquez nodded politely to the assembled aliens. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this is a difficult time for all of you. Your entire way of life has changed in the span of an hour. But I want you to understand that humanity holds no grudge against the people of the Empire. You were caught in the same system that enslaved us. What about us? Vorthak asked quietly. The leadership? The military commanders? Those who actively participated in the conquest of Earth? Marcus answered before anyone else could speak. That depends entirely on what you do next. We're not interested in revenge. We're interested in justice. Those who help with the transition, who work to make reparations for the damage done, who genuinely try to build something better, they'll find us quite forgiving. And those who don't, Sarah's expression hardened slightly, will discover that the Terran Exodus fleet isn't going anywhere. We've learned to be very good at watching for predators. The ship's communication system crackled to life with a priority message from the former Empire's core worlds. Attention all vessels. This is Acting Governor Martinez of the Terran Colonial Administration. All human slaves and prisoners in the Rigel sector have been successfully evacuated. Humanitarian assistance is being provided to local populations affected by the infrastructure failures. Colonial Authority vessels are standing by to assist any Empire personnel who require evacuation or emergency aid. Martinez, Marcus said with a smile. Good man. Lost his whole family in the initial invasion, but he never let it make him bitter. He'll make sure the transition goes smoothly. Chancellor Vorthak looked around the chamber at the other Imperial officials, seeing his own confusion and fear reflected in their faces. In the span of an hour, everything they had known about the galaxy had changed. The empire that had seemed eternal was gone, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary association of free worlds. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since the day you conquered Earth, Marcus replied. We knew that eventually we'd get a chance to strike back. But we also knew that simply destroying the empire wouldn't be enough. We had to be ready to build something better in its place. And if it doesn't work? If chaos and war break out across the galaxy? Sarah's voice was calm and confident. Then we'll adapt. That's what humans do. We solve problems, we help people, and we keep moving forward. The galaxy doesn't need masters, it needs partners. The chamber fell quiet as the full scope of what had happened began to sink in. The Galactic Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 1,000 years, had ceased to exist. In its place, a new order was emerging, one based not on conquest and control, but on cooperation and mutual respect. Marcus looked around at the faces of the former Imperial leadership, seeing not enemies but people who had been trapped in a system as much as they had trapped others. The galaxy is free, he said simply. All of it. For the first time in a millennium, every world gets to choose its own destiny. We think that's worth celebrating. Outside the observation ports, the human fleet began to disperse, ships peeling away to begin the massive task of coordinating humanitarian relief across hundreds of star systems. The age of empire was over. The age of cooperation had begun. 6 hours after the execution that was meant to break human resistance forever, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the TES Remembrance, watching as shuttle after shuttle arrived from across the former empire. Each one carried human prisoners, freed slaves, and refugees who had spent 3 years believing they might never see home again. The Remembrance was Sarah's flagship, a massive vessel that served as both warship and mobile city. Its corridors bustled with activity as humanitarian coordinators processed the rescued humans. Medical teams treated those who had suffered under Imperial captivity, and diplomatic corps members coordinated with the flood of requests for assistance from newly independent worlds. Dad. Marcus turned to find Sarah standing in the doorway. No longer the iron-willed admiral who had faced down an empire. She was just his daughter, 27 years old and carrying the weight of decisions that had reshaped the galaxy. Sarah. He opened his arms, and she crossed the distance between them in 3 quick steps. The embrace lasted long enough to make up for 3 years of separation. 3 years of not knowing if the other was alive. 3 years of carrying the hope that somehow, someday, they would see each other again. I was so scared, she whispered against his shoulder. When I saw you on that platform when they were about to execute you, I almost gave the order to attack immediately. But you didn't, Marcus said, holding her tight. You waited for the right moment. You followed the plan. The plan almost failed, Sarah admitted, pulling back to look at him. When the Zephyrian fleet changed course 3 days ago, we thought they might have discovered our preparations. If they had jumped to a different system, but they didn't, Marcus said gently, and now it's over. We won, baby girl. We actually won. Sarah laughed, a sound caught between triumph and tears. We didn't just win, Dad, we changed everything. Do you know what happened an hour ago? The Altarian Republic formally invited us to establish a permanent embassy on their homeworld. The Vegans want to name a star system after Earth. Even some of the former Imperial species are asking to join our humanitarian alliance. Marcus walked to the observation port, looking out at the bustling activity surrounding the ship. In the distance, he could see the dark bulk of the former Zephyrian command vessel, now carrying a mixed crew of humans and aliens working together to establish one of the new communication hubs that would replace the Empire's centralized network. What about the former Imperial leadership? He asked. Chancellor Vorthak has been surprisingly cooperative, Sarah replied, joining him at the viewport. He's been helping us identify prison camps and slave facilities. Admiral Crixtel has requested permission to assist with the humanitarian relief efforts. I think they're genuinely trying to make amends. And the ones who aren't? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Director Chen of the Intelligence Division found evidence of 6 labor camps that were ordered destroyed rather than surrendered. We're hunting down the commanders responsible. They'll face justice, Marcus nodded. Justice, not revenge. It was a distinction that mattered, one that would define how history remembered this day. The casualty reports? He asked. Lower than we feared. The frequency hammer disabled ships and stations, but the emergency protocols we transmitted saved most of the crews. Total fatalities across the entire operation are under 10,000, and most of those were from Imperial forces who chose to fight, rather than surrender. 2,000 lives lost to free 3 billion humans and countless other species. It was a terrible arithmetic, but Marcus had seen enough war to know that sometimes terrible mathematics were the only kind available. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Sarah touched a control panel and Director Vasquez appeared on the screen, her weathered face showing satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. Admiral, I have the latest reports from the relief operations. The Kepler Mining Consortium has agreed to provide full compensation to the human workers who were enslaved there. The Proxima shipyards are being converted to humanitarian manufacturing. They'll be producing medical equipment and emergency housing for refugee populations. Any resistance from the local authorities? Sarah asked. Some grumbling, but nothing serious. Most of them are too busy trying to figure out how to govern themselves after 1,000 years of imperial rule. The transition coordinators we've placed in each system are helping, but it's going to take time. Marcus smiled. How long before the first free elections? The Altarians are planning theirs for next month, Director Vasquez replied. The Vegans want to hold a galaxy-wide constitutional convention to establish new trade and security agreements. And the Danebians, well, they're still partying, but they've asked us to help them set up a representative government once the celebration dies down. After the communication ended, Marcus and Sarah stood in comfortable silence, watching the organized chaos of a galaxy reinventing itself. In the distance, a convoy of ships bearing the insignia of the Terran Humanitarian Corps was departing for the Outer Rim, carrying supplies and medical aid to worlds that had been cut off from Imperial support. Do you think it will work? Sarah asked quietly. This new system we're trying to build? Marcus considered the question carefully. I think it has a better chance than what came before. The Empire ruled through fear and force. We're trying to build something based on cooperation and mutual benefit. It won't be perfect, nothing ever is, but it'll be better. And if it starts to fall apart, then we adapt, we learn, we try again. Marcus put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. That's what humans do, Sarah, we don't give up. A new group of shuttles was approaching the Remembrance, these ones carrying children. Human children who had been born into slavery and were seeing freedom for the first time. Medical teams were standing by to care for them, while teachers and counselors prepared to help them understand what it meant to be free. I want to help with the children's programs, Marcus said suddenly. The ones who grew up in the camps. They're going to need people who understand what they've been through. Sarah nodded. I'll arrange it. But Dad, there's something else. Something I've been meaning to ask you. What's that? The Earth Restoration Project. We've been surveying the planet for the past year. Most of the damage the Empire did can be repaired. The cities can be rebuilt, the ecosystems restored. In 5 years, maybe 10, Earth could be habitable again. Marcus felt his breath catch. Earth, home. The question is whether you want to go back. Whether any of us do. We could build something new instead. Start fresh on one of the worlds that have offered to host human colonies. Marcus looked out at the stars, thinking of the blue-green world that had been humanity's cradle, the world where he had met Elena, where Sarah had been born, where their family had been happy before the Empire came. I want to see Earth again, he said finally. I want to walk through the ruins of our old house, show our grandchildren where their grandmother used to grow roses. But I don't want to go back to the way things were. What do you mean? The old Earth was isolated, insular. We thought we were alone in the universe. Now we know better. The new Earth should be a bridge between worlds, a place where humans and aliens can meet as equals, a symbol of what the galaxy can become when people choose cooperation over conquest. Sarah smiled. I like that idea. Earth as the capital of the new galactic community, not ruling over other worlds but serving as a meeting place for all of them. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we have work to do. 3 billion humans to relocate and care for. Hundreds of species to help transition to self-governance. A galaxy to rebuild from the ground up, Marcus chuckled. Just another day's work for the Chen family. Just another day's work for humanity, Sarah corrected. We're not alone in this anymore, Dad. We have allies now, partners, friends we haven't even met yet. As if summoned by her words, a new message appeared on the communication screen. This one came from a species Marcus didn't recognize. Tall, graceful beings with silver skin and large, expressive eyes. Greetings, humans of Earth, the alien spokesperson said in accented but clear English. We are the Serenity Collective of the Outer Spiral. We have observed your actions against the Empire, and we wish to offer our assistance in building this new galaxy you speak of. We have much to learn from a species that chose freedom over revenge, cooperation over conquest. Sarah activated the reply channel. This is Admiral Chen Rodriguez of the Terran Exodus Fleet. We would be honored to meet with your representatives. The galaxy is wide enough for all of us. Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand as more messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had hidden from the Empire, refugees from conquered worlds, even some former Imperial colonies that wanted to join the growing alliance of free worlds. The execution of a human sniper had indeed ended the Galactic Empire. But from its ashes, something far more beautiful was beginning to grow. A galaxy where no one knelt to monsters, where freedom was the birthright of every sentient being, where the future belonged to all who were brave enough to reach for it. Marcus Chen closed his eyes and smiled, feeling the presence of his wife Elena in the starlight around them. They had kept their promise. Humanity would never kneel, and neither would anyone else ever again.